IoT has graduated from being a science project to primetime solutions in almost every single industry. I'm joined today by somebody who's been a part of dozens of these types of projects. Amir Kashani, Rackspace's General Manager of IoT and Cloud Native Development, is here to discuss 5 key ways to fail with IoT. Amir, what's first on your list?
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, number 1 is if your platform or backend application goes down. That is a surefire way to destroy your brand and have marketing and sales efforts backfire. And we've seen this happen. So the way to mitigate this is to go cloud first and cloud native. Leverage the services provided by the major cloud providers, which include connectivity, compute, data management, and incorporate those and have those be your strategy for scale and growth.
All right, so with all of these devices that enable an IoT solution, I would imagine security plays into this as well.
Yeah, that's right. So security breaches are number 2, right? So if you have another security breach, it's a good surefire way to destroy your brand. And security in IoT is pretty hard. We're talking about devices that are distributed. There's many of them, and oftentimes are very low powered. So some of the traditional approaches to securing communications and data don't really apply or don't translate one-to-one. You have to take more creative approaches. So it's something that has to be, it's hard, but it can't be ignored. And that's really the mistake that we've seen some customers make, is that they sort of defer that problem and sort of hope the problem away. So the solution here is really do consider it from the start, because there are really great solutions out there for everything from securing the data stored on the device to the local communications to sensors or local networks, to the communications to the cloud. And really, one of the key aspects here is the firmware management and management of any code or configuration. Consider how you're going to be able to update these devices in the case of a security breach or an issue. Make sure you have a process in place that you can deploy updates quickly and reliably. And that leads us to number 3, hardware testing and ruggedness. So consider and design for the environment in which your devices will be operating. And that could be things like regulations, it could be environmental concerns. It might be in a harsh environment with a lot of moisture or wind or dust. And plan for those and test those in those environments. And the way we like to talk about doing this is to design early POC tests, pilot tests that you can use to deploy devices in the real world and get real data back. Because for as well designed as your lab tests may be, they're not going to give you the data you need from the real world. So plan to start small, iterate, and work on your design. Incorporate that feedback back into your design to make sure that once you go big and go production, you have something solid.
Excellent. Well, of course, you don't consider your platform, you're going to fail. You don't consider security or the environment, fail. Well, all of these devices and part of the solution creates an incredible amount of data. How does that impact success or failure?
Yeah, that leads us to number 4, put your data to work. So initially, all IoT devices start with a couple ideas on how to collect data from the physical world, this untapped data. And you might have a couple sensors in mind. And initially, maybe you're just focused on monitoring, collecting, and reporting on that data. But pretty soon, you're going to see, or you should be looking for ways to change your business, ways to affect behavior of your users through that data and the insights that they can provide. So what we suggest to do is to work backwards from those outcomes that you're after, and then figure out what are the data sources you need to capture, what frequency you need to capture those to drive those outcomes. And don't be too tunnel visioned on your initial goals, because what's really interesting about IoT and the data are the secondary use cases that come out after the devices are deployed. So always look at other ways to drive value from that data. And that brings us to number 5, monetization and cost. These devices tend to live out in the world for 3 to 5 years, in some industries even longer. We're talking to customers who want devices to live out there for 10 years or longer. And considering the costs associated with managing those devices and the platforms that support them is really critical to make sure that you have a really great ROI. So beyond just the initial R&D cost and manufacturing, which are a little bit easier to consider the long-term cost of operating these platforms and how that ties into any sort of monetization strategy you have, whether it's an initial sale of a widget or a recurring fee. Be sure to work those into your models.
Okay, so there it is. 5 key ways to either succeed or fail at your next IoT project.